Hey everybody, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. This podcast series is about getting to the books that have impacted the lives of the people in my network. So these are great leads, and I'll be interviewing on those books. I want to get to those books that have contributed the most to who they are as a person, the value that they create in their business, their work, their life, their leadership, all these worlds that intersect. And it can be a book that they have written themselves or that they've read of someone else's. So to that end, I cover three categories of books in this series. The first is a book that they're sharing with me that I haven't read myself. The second is a book that we've both covered or both read, whether specifically for the series or in our past lives before the series. And then the third is when I have writers or publishers that want to share the message of the books that they've put out there, whether it's one book that they've put out, a series, whatever it may be. And my guest today is Melanie Herschorn, and Melanie wants to help you step into your spotlight as an authority, a publisher and book marketing expert for business owners, consultants, professionals, and speakers worldwide. She's on a mission to empower authors to share their message with the world. With a comprehensive background of over 20 years as a celebrity publicist, award-winning journalist in radio, print, and TV, as well as a clothing designer and entrepreneur, Melanie is uniquely, positioned to support authors to step into thought leadership and make a big impact with their book. Her new book, Make a Big Impact with Your Book, is available now. And I met Melanie through Ali Berthume when Ali hosted Melanie and I on her series, the Open Book Broadcast, in which she brings out guests to talk about writing, authorship, publishing, anything that has to do with books and authorship. So Melanie and I met on that panel. After being on the panel, you get a sense of who someone else is, even if you had never met them before. So I invited her onto the series. And I met Ali through Edie Clark, and both Edie and Ali had been previous guests on this series. So it's just this train of connections that just keeps going. So Ali was on my series on episode 46, Edie on episode 48, and then Ali again on episode 87 with Bridget Gowan Hawkins. To cover their book, Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One, the only guide you need to pen, publish, and profit from your nonfiction book. And I've been very lucky that the series has put me in touch with so many great people, authors, coaches of all calibers, of all backgrounds across the country, around the world. And Melanie, thank you so much for being here. Just one additional link to that chain of connections that I made. So thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. I hope to be an outstanding, memorable guest.
Yeah, you will be. If it's just like the panel, and I attended one of your events last night, you definitely will be. So, Melanie, for those who don't know you, who are you today? If you could, obviously, I read the bio, gave some background of the work that you do, but what does your day-to-day look like? Who are you today in terms of the work that you're doing for your clients?
Today and every day is a new day. That's one of the really amazing things about doing what I do. And because I am a Gemini, it really fits with my personality in that you never know what you're going to get. So I am an independent publisher, and we specifically help attorneys who have founded law firms and other professionals, business owners, publish and promote their books. And I also love to help authors who already published their books and didn't get any traction. It's so common, and I am here to help you take your book and make magic with it, even if you published 6 months to 2.5, 3 years ago. As long as the content is evergreen, meaning it's not going out of style, and even then, I can make, sprinkle some fairy dust there. Your book can still make a big impact.
Yeah, I have an entirely new appreciation for everything that goes into book writing. Maybe I was so naive when I thought previously was you write a book, you put it out, and it's either a success or it's not. But then in talking to all my newfound friends, authors, publishers, so on and so forth, it's amazing what really does go, how that messaging just continues, that the book is the foundation, but it's the foundation of everything that comes behind it. Doing interviews such as this, going on the radio, doing workshops, that it's not just enough to put together a beautifully bound book or ebook with a great design that's eye-catching. It's not even the great content that's going to catch it, but it's really stepping outside and doing the work to bring people in to really, and you've probably seen this, just the growth of it, just doing things like this. Like, you have to get your tone out there, your voice. People have to get a sense for who your personality is to really drive those sales and bring your audience in.
Right. And a lot of authors say, well, the book should just speak for itself. And I say, well, no, you have to speak for the book because it's a book. And, just going back to something you touched upon, so often we think that as long as we write an amazing book and publish an amazing book that we're proud of, it gets put out there on Amazon, it gets put out there on, all the online places you can buy books, that people will buy it. And unfortunately, that's a naive way of looking at it, because the truth is there are millions of books published every single year. And it's incumbent upon you as the author to make it stand out in the sea of books. And that is really where the promotion piece comes. And there's a system to it. Especially, I have a proven system, a proven framework that works, but ultimately it's a three-step process, right? You have to dial in the messaging. So you have
Mhm.
to make sure that what you're saying at all times is going to resonate with your ideal reader. And then you want to leverage other people's audiences, kind of like you were talking about, going on podcasts, going on, getting media opportunities. I was on the news a couple weeks ago. That's a wonderful opportunity to reach more people. And then finally, you want to create new revenue streams from your book. So that could be creating a course. It could be pitching yourself to speak on stages where they only allow people who've written a book. And it
Mm.
can also be commanding higher speaking fees, higher consulting fees. And, if you're a children's book author, which, impactful books, maybe not, depends how you look at children's books, but, creating a stuffed animal to go along with the series, any kind of plushie that really, you know, goes along with it. So the truth is, we don't get rich on book sales. And yeah, it's you don't make a lot of money if your whole goal is to just sell books.
Yeah. So when it comes to you and your work, since you've been in this space, how have you seen, I mean, I can see that more people are going on podcasts talking about their books, but what kind of shifts have you seen in the industry in the time that you've been in the publishing space?
There is so much predatory behavior, and it only gets worse every day. There was a very big publisher that folded in the middle of the night and left a lot of authors scrambling and took their money. So what I see is that there's there's no barrier to entry anymore. And the more people there are more people now who are willing to say, you know what, I do want to independently publish my
Mm.
book. There is no stigma against it anymore. With the traditional publishers, there's a lot of work, pre-work that goes into it before you even write and publish the book. You have to potentially get an agent, and then hope that somebody buys it, that buys your idea. And that advance that you get paid can be as little as, $500, depending on how many book sales they think they're going to get on the back end. None of that matters if you decide to go the independent publishing route. And so what I love about that is how quickly you get to turn it around, and how much control you have creatively and otherwise, and you get 100% of your own royalties. So those are the differences. And then in terms of the trend is that people want to do it on their own. They don't I mean, they often, get a publishing partner like myself, but they
Yeah.
don't want to wait, because now people realize that even if you publish with one of the big 5 publishers, the marketing is very minimal, if that. So no matter how you publish, the promotion is on you. So
Yeah.
would you rather wait, 2 years to publish a book, or would you rather get it out now?
No, that's a good point. And I think that's what holds so many people back is that concern of, am I going the right route? What's been great about having authors on is you talk about the growing pains you had in putting out your first book, and then after that you kind of get into that rhythm. You come up with great partners that you learned about. So it's always like that first book. It's interesting seeing that theme across the various authors that I've spoken to. So thank you for that. Now, to understand how you ended up here, what did your path into your career look like? And typically I ask from like high school into college on. I'm always curious what somebody was going to school or into the workforce for, and then how it led up to who they are today. So what's your story?
Mine is non-linear for sure.
I like
Uh,
those. Those are my favorite though.
so you gotta get in the car with me because it's a zigzaggy hairpin turn road. So high school, that was a very long time ago, John. But I could talk after college. So in college, I studied history because I had always wanted to be a journalist, and my parents said, "No, you shouldn't take journalism in college. You should learn everything there is to know about the world, and then you can do a master's degree in journalism down the road." So I took their advice because they're my parents and I didn't know better. But I don't regret learning history. I absolutely loved it. And now you can't take that away from me. And when I graduated college, I ran away to California from Canada. I was in Canada and I ran away to Los Angeles and I worked in entertainment. And I was there for several years after going from celebrity PR to journalism. I got my master's at University of Southern California. And then I was married and my husband had moved to Pennsylvania and wanted to join him because we were married. And so I moved to Pennsylvania and I worked on the radio. I was working on radio news for a few years. I was at the local NPR affiliate, the afternoon news anchor and reporter. And then I decided that I was going to have a baby and I was going to do it in a non-election year so that I wouldn't mess up all the election coverage. So, gloves come off and we're ready to have a baby. And I'm 5 months pregnant and I get laid off.
Oof.
And it was a tough time because all of a sudden I went from being, famous in central Pennsylvania to unemployed and unemployable. And I was fortunate that the newspaper in that city, the managing editor called me because I became part of the news. The layoffs were such that I became I was in the story, which
You were
as a
the
journalist,
story.
you don't want to be the story when you're a journalist. That's not what you want. And you want to report on the stories. So the managing editor called me and she said, "Melanie, we want you to come and freelance for us." And I said, "But Kate, I'm pregnant." And she said, "I don't care." And I went, "Oh, okay." So, I mean, it was pennies, but it was something. And then we moved to Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, from Pennsylvania to Phoenix. And when we got to Phoenix, I thought, well, I could try to get a job in journalism and pay a nanny more than I'll be making. Or I could do something else. And the thing that had been tapping on my heart was to design and manufacture breastfeeding clothing, which was not, again, linear. So I did that. And I Googled everything and figured out how to do it. And I found somebody to help me, actually create the designs. And I had that business for 7 years. I sold my clothes on Nordstrom.com, on Amazon, in boutiques in Canada and the US. And then I hired somebody to help me with my marketing. And she was toxic. So she belittled me at every chance she got. And I started to feel really insecure about my ability to write, my ability to market my products, my ability to make any decisions.
Mm.
And that went on for a year. I paid her $25,000 to basically ruin my business. So eventually I closed the doors, sold off the stock at like a 99% loss, and ended up like at zero. So I didn't owe anything, but I didn't have anything. And then I had some thinking to do because, what do I want to do now? But I'll tell you, being an entrepreneur was is one of the greatest things in the whole wide world. Not having to show up somewhere, not
Mm.
having to answer to somebody. It's like a drug, and I was addicted. So I knew that I was not going to go and get a job. But what was I going to do? I didn't know. So I really took some time and I thought about it. And I looked back at, all the things that I had done up until that point. And I realized that sort of the through line of everything was elevating people's voices, getting people's voices out there. And even you can say, well, what does that have to do with nursing wear? But the truth was, new moms had nothing to wear. They felt terrible about themselves. And there I was creating something to make them feel, human and desirable and to feel good about themselves. So when I saw that, I realized that I could help people with their marketing. And I would always do it in a supportive way
Mm.
because that's how I am. That's who I am. I just want people to feel good, to be happy. So the minute I kind of metaphorically hung the shingle outside, I started getting calls from authors. And it was not just one, it was several. And I went, okay, universe, I'm listening. This is clearly something that I need to look deeper into. And now I realize that I can help people from beginning to end, because what's happening is there's so many, and I touch upon this, there's so many authors whose books never do anything because they never promoted it. So now I can help people from writing to editing to publishing to promotion so that they know that their book is going to do the most for them that it can. And so that's where I sit today in my onesie. It's a very
What so I was going to ask you what was it about journalism, but then you said something just in the last minute about raising people's voices and essentially having them see. I mean, can you speak to that when you were thinking about going to school for journalism and your parents said, no, do something broader and then maybe mastering it later? What was it? What did that need or desire to share stories, to tell stories, to put them out there? Where do you think that came from when you were younger?
I I love writing. I love telling stories. But I think that as a child, I always felt like my voice didn't matter. Not going to blame my parents. I love them, but it was not easy. And I always felt as though I was being quieted down. And so that desire to get other people's voices elevated and out there is clearly an innate thing from what I didn't have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always the kind of be the person that you needed. It's interesting how often the people that I talk to on here, their work stems from those kind of needs, those
Yeah.
wants, those desires that they had when they were younger. And now, they can get paid to help others. They can find a career in it. So that's amazing.
Thank you. And I think I just cut you off, but I was
No,
going
no,
to say,
no. Go
okay.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I did not. It's not like I was a bookworm. I was the antithesis of a bookworm. I don't know what the antithesis is, but that was me. I had such trouble learning how to read. I remember being in like first grade and trying to get through this book and shouting to my mom every other word, Mom, what does this say? And it was such a miserable experience that I gave up on liking books. And I much preferred television because the story was just told to me and I didn't have to read about it. Um, but all that to say, when I was in 4th grade, I picked up a Judy Blume book, and it really changed my perspective on reading. And I read this one book over and over and over again for the next 2, 3 years. I wasn't going to try another book, but this one was good. And but I never read for pleasure. And I always wondered what was wrong with me, because my mom will always she always has a book. She's always finishing one and starting another. And I always wondered what was wrong with me. And then I found nonfiction. And I went, oh my God, I love this. And so I am a big, like, I always have a nonfiction book that I'm just starting or just finishing. So I think that is something, just, I don't know what to say about that. This is the first time I'm even thinking about it. If you'd like to give me your armchair psychiatry answer, I'm happy.
Not a psychiatrist, but I always like digging into, and I think I only brought up that question, this next question, at some point during this series. So it wasn't even in the original lineup of questions, but I just realized how much people were talking about their childhoods. I mean, obviously, I asked about how you went into your career, but I don't think many went into childhood. So I started bringing it up just because it would come up in conversation. So my next question for you is, and this is going to be an interesting response. Does it make sense from your childhood that this is what you're doing? How do you reconcile that? Because I heard didn't like reading, but then it started enjoying and kind of taking in nonfiction. So how do you make sense of what you're doing today compared to your childhood?
Okay. Well, I was the kid who figured out how to take 2 VCRs and edit film for class. So much of what I do is video. So much of what I do is talking in front of, like, I am so vain. I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at me. And well, I look at you a little bit, but no, being in front of the camera is something that I've always loved. But with regard to books, because I always loved writing, I started writing books when I was 9 years old. I started writing chapters of this book, and I've always wanted to write a book. It was this thing on my bucket list, and I didn't know how I was going to do it, and I didn't know what it was going to be about, because every time I was at a stage in my life where I thought I would write the book, it changed. So what I was doing changed. And I thought, well, that doesn't make any sense for me to write a book about,
That
breastfeeding, for
stage,
example.
yeah.
It doesn't make any sense for me to write a book about copywriting because I don't want to do that anymore. I did that in there too. I didn't mention that. I almost I almost wrote a book about my master's thesis, which was about online dating.
Interesting. Okay.
However, it was obsolete as quickly as it was, as soon as it was published, it was obsolete because I graduated before the invention of Tinder. So swipe right was not part of our vernacular yet. So it would have been like a dinosaur book that nobody would have read. So I kept stopping myself. And until my most recent book, when I knew in my bones that this is what I am meant to write about. So I kept stopping myself.
So going back to what you said, and it plays into this, but going back to what you said, like armchair psychiatrist or whatever, and I won't do that. But was it when you came across nonfiction, was it tied to the way that you felt you couldn't get your story, but here were the stories of people their life stories out there? Was it almost like you felt like you couldn't, but here you were, you knew it was out there, and you got a sense of who people were by hearing those stories? Is that what drew you to nonfiction?
I think what drew me to nonfiction is um, I am a kind of person who loves when people get to the point. I think that we only have so much time on this earth. And I don't love spending it reading about things that aren't happening. I like to know what's going on in the world. And so
Mm,
I think that my thirst for knowledge and for the truth is really what drives my desire to read nonfiction. Because I love reading the news, and I love I read People magazine every single week. I like to know what's going on in celebrity lives.
mhm.
So I think it's just I don't go to books for escape. I go to
Yeah.
books for information.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say or wonder about, just because it's almost like when I talk to friends who travel a lot and they go to all these other places across the globe, but they don't travel within the US. So it's similar to that, and like, why are you going out there when we have, why do you have to go somewhere? Not that there's anything wrong with going somewhere foreign, but somewhere that's so different from us that we have to come up with and try to visualize what that may look like when we have, the real world, within a road trip in our backyard. So that's interesting.
And that's funny because I don't travel within the US very much, but I definitely go outside the borders.
All right, there goes my theory. That shot the shit. Okay.
The theory works, but just not in, when you're applying it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but that I can see that. I can see that thinking in terms of you when it comes to books. It's like, why do we have to create all these crazy worlds when people have been living? I think everybody has an interesting life to one in one way or another. They may look at it and tell you, no, I don't, because they're just kind of living in their life at that moment in that year, those circumstances. But like you said, look at what you've done. Look how many places you've lived, careers you've had, experiences you've had, good and bad. Um, I think you may be excelling now because of that year of turmoil that you had with that woman that was toxic, right? I mean, it's something to be said about real experiences and just how much they can teach you.
Absolutely. And I'm not knocking fiction. Fiction is fantastic.
Mm.
Just I'm working with a fiction author right now, and I got sucked into her book because she is such a good writer.
Yeah.
But I was reading it with an intention behind it. It was not, and I think that's really for me what it is. I don't read to relax. I read to learn. And there are some people who read to relax. And I think that that's where the fiction attraction comes in.
Yeah. Just escape from the daily grind.
And my escape is The Young and the Restless. I've been watching it since I was 11, and I'm 44 and 3/4. So that tells you how long I've been watching it.
Those things just don't die.
I don't want it to. Shh, don't say that.
But I mean, okay, not this one, but some of them have, right?
Yes, many of them
I
have.
remember babysitters in the 80s had like General Hospital, Bold and the Beautiful, all that BS. It's like,
Well, and The
Jesus.
Beautiful's still on.
Is it really? My
Yeah,
God.
it's a sister show of The Young and the Restless. So just ask
Melanie,
me these things.
trivia. What does leadership mean to you? What does great leadership look like?
Great leadership is giving direction in a kind way and really sharing what your vision is so people don't feel like they are little ducks under the water going like this because they don't know what you want and they're just going back and forth. Great leadership is showing people that they can do it too and making them feel supported.
It's little things like that. Little things like that. Doesn't take much, but yeah, That's a great point because when people don't know where the leader is or what they're thinking, that's exactly what it is. It's just this little chaos of people just heading in different directions. So I appreciate that response. Now we can jump to your book. Melanie, can you introduce the book? And you kind of gave us a little bit of the answer to this, but what was it? I know kind of like the lead up to it, but what was that trigger for you to actually say, okay, now this is going to be done? What did that look like on the ground in the day to day when you kind of made that decision? So yeah, introduce the book and how it came to be.
Okay. I think I followed all those questions. So I'll try to give you a good synopsis of the answer. So the book is called Make a Big Impact with Your Book, Author Marketing Strategies for Long-Term Success. That is essentially what I do. So once I really solidified what I did, I said, okay, this is really silly. I need to have a book because I work with authors and they have books. So let's get on it, Mel. And it took me 2.5 years. So it was not fast. Anyone who's ever written a book more than, or even read a book more than once, you find mistakes and you don't want to. Also, as an author, you read something over and over again, and then you're just kind of sick of it and you don't want to touch it for a while because you just can't bear to open up the file. And so that's where I was. It was like an ebb and flow of, okay, I would write and then I would break for like 2 months because I couldn't even open it because it's just, I put a lot of pressure on myself for it to be perfect. And because of what I do, if I come up with a shoddy book, who's going to take me seriously? I wouldn't even take myself seriously. There's a lot of pressure there. But I had a couple false starts. I thought it was done, and I had it with I was working with a hybrid publisher, and then I realized this hybrid publisher had some of the same toxic traits of the marketer that I had worked with. And so I said, that's it, I'm out. And the person kept my money, and I took my book and I said, this is not happening. And so I called a friend of mine who is now my publishing partner, and I said, Susie, can you help me, please? So then I ended up publishing under my own imprint. And the publishing process didn't take that long. It was really the writing process until I was so happy with the output that I sent over to my editor. The editor really didn't do much editing. Like, it was very minimal, which is exactly what I wanted, right? Like, if I had sent her a book that was in disarray and covered in red lines, then, that would have made me feel really bad about myself, but I didn't. So the process was long and arduous. And of course, now that I have one book, I can't wait to write another one.
Can you give us a kind of just an overview of the book? What's the path you take the reader on? Whether it's you broke it up in certain parts, or if you can give a couple chapter names, what does that look like? What do you take the reader through?
I take the reader through basically the process that it takes to build a marketing foundation for your brand using your book. And I don't love cookie cutter marketing because that doesn't work. So it's not like there are prompts for what to post on social media. That's not what this is. This is basically a primer, how to create a marketing foundation so that when you have a book, people buy it. And takes you from the social media and email marketing and all about the lead magnet, which is the freebie that you can give away. Takes you through, using PR for good as opposed to going straight to PR and then having no marketing foundation and then still selling no books. So it's a lot of, great examples of how to take your book and make a difference with it.
Yeah, that paints the picture of the whole not waiting until the book is out to market, to get the message out there, but way before that published date, um, doing the work before that. So I love that because I didn't think about how much went into publishing a book, getting the word out there until the pandemic, until I was interviewing people, until I saw how many people were writing books, putting books out there, and until I started talking to publishers, authors, you, Allie, about the work that goes into the book even before it's out. So, I mean, naively, I was probably thinking, you write the book, you publish it, and then you pay for advertising somewhere and they deal with it. But it's changed my perspective a lot, just learning about what really goes into, even as you're writing the book, getting things out there, as a lead up to the book coming out.
Definitely. And, I hear all the time from new authors, they say, I don't know what I don't know. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. So, can you market your book while you're writing it? 100%. Do most authors market their book while they're writing it? No.
Mm,
No, they don't. But I don't want people to feel shame and blame and
yeah.
then think that their book shouldn't go anywhere, because you can absolutely pick up from where you left off and start again. And there's this I see this all the time. It's very frustrating because I could help. Um, People, it's the launch. I have my launch team and they're all excited. And then everybody that they buy the book and then they launch. And then it's like a rocket that goes up and then it's just like smoke and it fizzles and then nothing happens. And then the author sits there and they wonder why nothing is happening because they
Mm.
launched. And so my mission is to really help people understand, which goes back to my desire to not only get knowledge, but to impart it to others. You have to have the marketing foundation, and then that sort of snowballs upon itself, to mix my rocket and snow metaphors. Because if you don't have anything happening, people aren't going to know about it. That one day of launch or that one week of launch is not going to create a trajectory for your book the way you envision it to. And, I had a client, sorry, I'm covered in like cat fur. I must have been like kissing my
No
cat
worries, no worries.
or my dog, one of the two. I had a conversation with a client or a would-be client once. And she said, well, I hired this PR firm and they did a great job. And I was on a national morning show and so, all these other, I think it was like 18 different PR placements. And I said, wow, they did a great job. I said, how many books have you sold? And she said, 100.
Mm.
And I was like, oh gosh. And of course, I don't have a poker face. So I was probably like, and I said, well, I'm going to be Dr. Bell and I'm going to let's diagnose what happened. So I go to her website and I was like, oh, that's what happened. The messaging. I had no idea what this woman did for a living. Why was I even on her website? I did not know. And I was actually trying to figure it out. If you think about all the people that are not trying to figure out what you do, they see it, they're confused, they're gone, and they're never coming back. So that's an important piece. It's the messaging. So if you have that
Mhm.
messaging already working for you when you launch, you can really make a difference. And so speaking of messaging, I had a client who wrote a book in the pandemic and it was kind of billed as a pandemic memoir. And you mentioned pandemic, John. I don't like to talk about it anymore because it was an upsetting time for all of us. But what happened was after it, even, after it, people don't want to read a pandemic memoir. So when I read the book, I said, you know what this is really? This is the story of a father getting to know how to parent his neurodivergent child. And when we reframed it, all of a sudden it made sense and was desirable. And the pitch that we wrote together got him into this huge bookstore in his state that he had been trying to get into. So even if you feel like your book has lost its legs, there are still legs. You just have to regrow them.
Yeah, if you've gone through it with that basic understanding that I used to have about, okay, I'll spend my time writing it, get it edited, put it out, and we'll see what happens. Even if you I do believe, even if you did go that route and now it's years later and you don't see anything at all, not even 100 copies or whatever it may be. You're right. If it is relevant, if it is timely, if it was valuable, if it wasn't specific to that time period, like solving a pandemic or whatever it may be, there is a way to message things that are applicable to what's going on today. And I think that's what's we suck at, is just telling our story.
Yeah.
So even knowing your value, telling your story, how are you going to know that in the different phases of your life? So even if you had a book that was published 7 years ago, it went nowhere, unless it was specific to something then, unless it was like Woodward and Bernstein or something like that, that the books that came out on Trump at that point, something, whatever it may be. Do you know your value enough to kind of repackage it to what's going out today, to what's applicable today? I mean, people may tell their story, but they don't know how to draw the lessons out from what they've experienced. So whatever you may be writing, you may see it in one way, but if you get a specialist like yourself, they can see like those little nuggets that they can bring out that are applicable to mass audiences. So it's another exercise in just looking back, seeing what you've done, and how do you yourself take value and bring it forward.
And I remember when I first started in entrepreneurship and I thought, well, what's so special about me? I'm just me. There's been no fiery crash and a phoenix rising from the ashes kind of story. But if you really do a deep dive into your past, I guarantee there are interesting things that happen to you that are unique to you that other people can learn from and appreciate and be enthralled by and will want to read about.
No one ever looks at their story that way.
No.
It's a self-reflection exercise. We don't do it naturally. It's only if we're prompted to go back into our lives and say, you know what, there are some lessons here I think that people would find interesting, whether it's, triumph, tragedy, resilience, whatever it may be. Everybody has a story. Again, we're just shitty storytellers, especially about our own lives.
Yes.
But it's like
That's it.
countless chapters that just exist of like, where we thought, okay, this is it. Like, this is going to take me under. There's so much that I'm tackling. And then you get through it, and much like those nonfiction books that you were reading as a kid, maybe you saw that, maybe you understood that, maybe you were inspired by it. People that were going through things in their lives and they didn't become it because they didn't know it, but they were resilient and pushed forward. And whoever it may be that you read about, it's inspiring to do that, to hear about other people, what they go through.
Yeah, and we as humans, we remember stories. We learn from stories much more so than if you list a bunch of names and dates and tell people to memorize them.
Yeah. Yeah. Melanie, so can you give some examples of some of the chapters in your book, or whatever the structure you may like, the actual structure? What is that, and how you lay it out for the writer, for the reader? Maybe some examples.
Can I cheat? Because I don't know that I can answer that question without an open
Of
book.
course, of course.
Okay, here's my open book test. So, all right. So, would you like show and tell? Here, I can show and tell.
Yes, please, please.
I love show and tell. That was my favorite subject in school. So the table of contents, which is the most exciting part of the book, I must tell you, not really at all. It is truly taking you through not only the process of building your marketing foundation, but also the mindset piece that is required to have your name in lights. And I've laid out the book, chapter by chapter because I like things in sequential order. But if you don't, that's okay too. You do not have to read it in sequence. I would love for you to read the introduction though, because I tell you a lot about myself, some of which I've already shared here. And I am also an open book, no pun intended. So if you're like, well, tell me more about that, I will absolutely do that offline. And, I talk about a lot of the mistakes that are made so that you can avoid them. Because Lord have mercy, have I made mistakes? And so I want to make sure that you don't make them. Let me be the only one who made them. And so that you don't have to do that. And talking about, what really is available to you as an author. Because once you have this book in hand, then all of a sudden things open up to you that were not open up to you beforehand. So, really, really talking about that and helping you dream big with what your book can do.
I like that, the way you put that. Some people, I mean, it's crazy. Like I may have been and probably still am a shitty storyteller, but I've always been a dreamer.
You know what? I don't like that you keep saying that. So I'm going to ask you to reframe that. Why are you a shitty storyteller? You're not a shitty storyteller.
No, I don't. Here's the thing. I don't think I am. I just always err on the side of humility. That's what that's about.
So, okay, but that's silly. Because you don't have to say, I'm going to say that your humility is silly, because I bet you're a great storyteller, because you mentioned you have 3 kiddos. I bet they love when you tell them stories.
No, yeah. Okay. No, you're right. And that's one of those things too, is seeing yourself as a storyteller, So, I mean, I got to take my own medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I forget, where was I going with that?
I wish I had a spoon. I could just give you some medicine.
Where was I going with that? What was I about to say?
Yeah, I don't know. You were telling me you're a bad
story. The dreaming. You were talking about the dreaming, and it's interesting how, yeah, you sometimes you have to remind people to dream.
Yeah,
because I mean, so many people are going to go through the script of life. They're going to go through their 9 to 5 or their entrepreneurial journey, whatever it may be. And you could still go through those things and not be a dreamer at all. It's like you're working towards something, but it's like a checkbox. It's not a dream. It's not a passion that you've had. So it's amazing how many people just need to be reminded to dream. And all they need is that one prompt, that one question, that one reminder, that one book, that one chapter, whatever it may be.
Yeah. I had dinner with some friends the other night, and one of my friends was talking about retiring. He's turning 50 and he's got his 15-year plan. And he was sort of going through all the boxes, telling us, well, I've got to do this and this and this and this. And I kept thinking, well, where's the enjoyment of the journey in that?
Yeah.
And yes, I'm so happy for him that he has a plan. And I am, I'm not a big planner. I don't love plans, but I feel like you have to enjoy the journey, because then if you get to the end and there wasn't any enjoyment, then what was it all for in the first place?
Yeah, that's a huge thing I've come across during the pandemic, during this podcast. It's amazing how therapeutic this podcast has been, just talking to you all and your experiences, little nuggets like that, like you just laid out. But it's amazing how it's gone from just seeing the goal at the end and checking boxes to get to that goal, to the importance of moments. Because like you said, and you put it perfectly, what if you get in there and that high that you were expecting just isn't it? Because how many times have you reached a goal and you're like, all right, what's next? Something else. Like that just lasts for a little bit. But if you make all the moments enjoyable, building in a general great direction that you want to head, it's like the downside is minimal, because you're taking advantage of those great moments. So I love that example of just, why are you planning so much and just keeping your eye on the horizon? You got to stop and smell the flowers. Like you have to take a look at what's around you.
Absolutely. I read something once, not long ago, and it resonated so much with me, and I don't remember it verbatim, but ultimately what it was saying is, when you reach your goal, it never feels as good as you thought it was going to feel. And
There's
which was,
actually a study on that, Melanie, that
yeah.
I think I saw it last year where it was, I mean, it was about sports fans and they wanted the championship. You know how rabid they can get,
Oh
but
yeah.
they did a study and it's just like when you get reach that championship, it's like, okay, now what? Like,
Right.
okay, like
So all that to say, think about the journey of writing your book. Think about the journey of sharing your book. Think about all the stories that you accumulate along the journey of life and how those will resonate with other people, your ideal readers.
yeah. And I mean, that's one of the questions that's because I asked that question and it's coming up, but it is about that journey for yourself. I mean, like anything, I think even this podcast, yeah, it's great if people know me, audience is building. I love it. It's awesome. But at the same time, I want to enjoy it as well. So I try to maintain that mindset that first and foremost, I have to be happy with it. I have to be happy with the episodes I'm putting out, the moments I'm having, what I'm learning. It's amazing. Like once I put the episode out and publish it, it's like it's gone. Like I do the work, I enjoy it, I meet great people, and then once I hit publish, it's like detachment onto the next one. I learn about my authors, I write about everybody, their lessons. It's amazing. But again, the steps as opposed to just hoping and praying that that high of the goal is gonna kind of carry you forward after that. So I'm curious about that then. Has there been a certain part of the book that's resonated with people? Has there been a particular spot that's jumped out? Talking about how you want to lay it out for your readers. Has
Y-
there
You know,
been something?
you know
Huh?
what I've heard the most actually is my personal stories. I've heard this is a great concise guide. I love it. It's so helpful. And I didn't know XYZ about you.
Mm,
I
yeah,
didn't know that. Wow,
yeah.
it's crazy how that happened to you. Because I try to sprinkle stories in throughout so that A, it's not dry, and B, people can get a sense of how I am and who I am. And actually, one thing that somebody mentioned to me last week, she said, we were just meeting for the first time on Zoom, and she said, so I was curious to know if are like the voice in your book. And it's the same. And I said, good,
Mm.
because that was me writing. So I'm glad that my tone came out because I am
And
me.
and that goes back to what you said about if I sent it off to the editor and it came back just butchered with red marks, it's gonna lose that semblance of who you are, like your voice and
Right. And I had a client once who had an idea to write a fictionalized account of a harrowing event that happened to her. And she had a book coach who steered her away from it and basically forced her to write a nonfiction. She never published it because it wasn't right. It did not sit right with her. And so I encouraged her to take that and write a fiction book. She's definitely contemplating it, but she's not there yet. And so when somebody tries to force you to be the something that you're not,
mm,
which again really irritates me, I will not do that.
yeah.
That's again about dreaming, right? Your dream is your dream. Nobody can tell you what it is. Your story is your story. Nobody can steer you away from telling it or should.
Melanie, so what I guess I'm just trying to find the right way to ask it. The toxic relationship, the marketer that you worked with,
Mhm.
aside from the obvious, what were your takeaways in terms of learning for yourself from that relationship? Especially since it was, I think you said about a year long, right?
Yeah. So I have had this problem. It's a chronic issue that I'm working on where I put people up on a pedestal and if they seemingly have all the things that one day I aspire to have or be, I will put them up on a pedestal. And I have had to have a no pedestal policy since then going forward because I like to give people the benefit of the doubt by nature. And I like to make people feel good about themselves. And unfortunately, some people take advantage of that. So I think that the biggest thing is don't put people up on a pedestal, because everybody should be on the same level.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason I asked was just because we were talking about the person you had mentioned wanting to write it a certain way. And then this other person was like, no, don't do that. Go this route. So you're getting away from who you are, so you can lose yourself in those relationships when, yeah, when you're not quite at their level, you don't quite have their knowledge, their background, so you trust them with it, and then something like that happens. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course. I have a client who I he's one of the most wonderful children's book writers. And he says to me, you really made me a better writer. And I find that to be one of the greatest compliments on the whole planet anyone could ever pay to me. And I said, Joe, what is it about it? And he said, well, you guide me, but you don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so important. I ask the questions. I try to poke the holes, like, well, what would happen here? What would happen there? But I never tell somebody what to do unless I'm like, don't go on that plane. I have a bad feeling about it. Then I'll tell you
Yeah,
what.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. When you get that final destination sensation, okay, fine. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the only time.
Uh has there been what in you has changed as a result of this book, whether it was the writing process, whether it was putting it out, the feedback from others? How did this book change you?
Well, as I mentioned, that it being a bucket list thing, it's given me more confidence as a writer and as a publisher too, because now I know what not to do. And that's always a great lesson, is what
Yeah.
not to
Oh,
do.
absolutely. And
So
what do you
I'm happy to take the punches so that you don't have to.
well, that's what I'm talking about. Somebody that's been through it, they've been through the ringer, they've gone through the growing pains. If you can find somebody that is genuine, understands the human element the way you have because of your own experiences, I mean, those are the kind of people that it's weird. I mean, yes, it's a transaction, yes, it's business, but when it's something as heavy and as precious as someone's story or the story that they want to tell, whether nonfiction or not, it's like you want to put that in the right hands. You want to trust the right person with that. So I think that comes across in just the priority that you put on the respect you have for it.
Thank you.
Um, Melanie, what book has inspired you?
So The Go-Giver by Bob Berg and somebody
Uh,
else whose name I can never remember.
I just heard that somebody just mentioned that. I think my last interview mentioned that same book, and I think we were limited on time for that interview or that conversation to get into it. What is it about that book? What's in general? What's the book about, and what's your takeaway on it?
Show and tell. I love show and tell. So let me give the other gentleman his due. John David Mann. I don't know why I couldn't remember that, but sorry, John David Mann. So this is The Go-Giver, and it's a parable, and it teaches you that. Okay, so often we get into entrepreneurship and we're like, I need this client. I'm going to a networking event so I can get this client. I need a client. And I have a mentor who says people get stabbed with business cards. It's like, I'm going to stab you with a business card because, just you can be my client. And it's all about take, 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 take. And this book shows you in a story form that when you give, you receive so much more. And so I've had the opportunity to super fangirl on this gentleman, Bob Berg, to the point where I have talked to him on the phone, and he even gave me a shout out on LinkedIn for my book. So I'm a big fan, and his book is mentioned in my book. So all that, but so it's called The Go-Giver, a little story about a powerful business idea, and the idea really is that it's not about taking, it's about giving. And if the world ran that way, gosh, we'd all be so much happier.
There's just so much fear. So much of it is fear based, where we do look at it as a zero-sum game. Like if you give something away, you're not going to give anything, you're not going to get anything back. It's just, it's unfortunate that it works that way. But I mean, listen, most of the people that I've talked to that are in your field doing the work that you do, all the people that I've spoken to that are trying to put value out there, I mean, that's the antithesis, is offsetting that fear by just giving and helping people out. So I mean, we're all trying to do our part to offset that.
Definitely.
That's the only thing we can do. What's my next question that I wanted to ask you? What do you hope people can take from this? If you had to put it in a summary, how do you pitch this book? What do you want people to take away?
That you personally have the ability to make an impact in the world with your book. Whether your impact, whatever your desire is, it's valid. And you want to put in the work and you can do it.
Yeah, that's simple, but we just again, our own stories, we need to get out of our own heads and look for that quality, that those connections that can support, provide accountability. Melanie, what's next for your writing?
Well, what's next? I definitely want to write another book. I haven't gotten the courage or whatever to do it yet because I'm planning a bat mitzvah and that is taking all my time. But once I have a little bit more time, and for those of you who don't know what a bat mitzvah is, it's basically like a wedding, but it's for a 12-year-old. So
Yeah.
that's what that is. So I'm wedding planning essentially right now, and that takes a lot of time. But I see the end, and once that happens, I'm going to have a little bit more brain space to really think about what the next book can be about. And maybe it's a deep dive. I've kind of thought about this a little bit, but I think it's going to be a deep dive on really getting some ROI, new streams of revenue from a book. I think that's kind of going to be my next book.
Focus, yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask if you had a general idea.
Yeah, now it's out there. So now I have to do it.
No pressure. That's one of the best things to do, is just put it out there, whether it's on Facebook. I mean, once you put it out there, you'd be amazed how fired up you get to get it done, because now other people are aware of what you're trying to do, and there's no turning back from that. I mean, you'll make it work, you'll do it right, you'll get that value out there. But I found for myself, just putting stuff out there and saying, okay, this is my plan, this is what I'm going to do. It's a little bit of accountability, even if it's not specifically to somebody, it's just everybody. Melanie,
Yes.
Just in beginning to wrap up, what are you up to these days? What would you like to share about anything that you have going on or coming up? Anything you want to share that I haven't asked? Anything you want to share with this audience?
I love how you ask like 7 questions and at once it took me to remember them all, which is something else.
And it was essentially the same, just the same. I'm testing your limit of, you want people to get to the point, and here I am rambling through questions. It's essentially, what do you have going on?
Yeah, I know, but John, it stems from my mom, who this is how I have conversations with her. She'll say, "Oh my gosh, you're never going to guess what happened to me today." And I'll say, "What happened?" And she says, "Well, 3 weeks ago." And then she starts and gives me the chronological order, everything that happened through 3 weeks. And I'm just like, get to the point.
She starts with the prequel.
Yes. And that's just how she is. She's very linear. She has to tell me step by step by step. And I am the opposite of that. I'm like, please don't bury the lead. Just tell me the main bottom line and I'm good. So
bury the lead, such a journalist.
I still am. I know. So bottom line, what am I up to? Well, I have workshops regularly for authors who wanted, it's called the Profitable Book Marketing Plan Workshop, where you can really, by the end, you have an outline for your own book, outline for your book plan, the marketing part of it. I can't speak right now, apparently. And I'm always just doing more things. I'm speaking at places, and I always have a free gift for your audience, which I would love to share. It is
absolutely.
ultimate book marketing plan. It's the ultimate book marketing plan checklist. I've been saying a lot of words, and I've only had one cup of coffee today, and
Oh, that's your problem right there.
the coffee ran out. It wore
The
off.
coffee to word ratio is just off.
Yes, that's exactly my problem. So, see, and there was my almost sarcasm. I was hoping for a little bit more sarcasm today, but you almost gave me some as a service. And based on the thing in the background that you have there.
Who's the first person to notice that and mention it? Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh,
No
you're
sarcasm.
welcome. No, I was I'd be like, you just noticed that now? That would have been like better sarcasm.
All right. So mention that the free deal
the
one more
checklist.
time, just
Yes,
to make
it
sure
is
people got it.
No, I was going to try to get back to that. It is the ultimate book marketing checklist. It is available on my website. It is vipbookmarketing.com/checklist. But if that's too much to remember, because apparently I can't even remember it, you just go to the website and it's there and it's for you and it's totally free. And what it does is it gives you a pretty good step-by-step of what's required for marketing book, and also a little bit of a deeper dive on how to create a lead magnet or a free resource that's going to really resonate with your ideal reader and not be the kiss of death, which is the first chapter. One time I had an author say to me, well, I give away the first chapter, but I also give away the table of contents. And I said, no, I didn't say that, but don't do that.
Thank you, Melanie, for your time.
Thank you, John. This was really fun.
I appreciate you. And again, Melanie's book is Make a Big Impact with Your Book, Author Marketing Strategies for Long-Term Success. And if there's anything that I might have missed, we're limited on time. I could have dragged Melanie down many rabbit holes with different questions, longer questions, repetitive questions. Let me know. I'll reach out to her, see what kind of insights, knowledge, value I can get back and she can share. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.